Welcome to another edition of Terabit Talks on LinkedIn Live. I'm your host, Chris Sass. And as always, I want to thank Nokia for making this possible. And today we're going to have a great guest. We have Dirk Kalkman. He is the chief architect of NLIX, an IXP, one of the largest in Europe. Dirk, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Chris. Great to be here. Very excited to do it.
I'm excited having you as a guest because you're on talking about disruption and how your industry is changing. In the pre-conversation, you talked about IXPs and their evolution. I think you said they were dying, but that's probably not a good career move. So maybe let's start out with what it is you guys do.
Well, we are NLIX. We're one of the largest exchanges in Europe. Peak about 10 terabits per second. And we connect the world. That's what we do. We bring people, we bring networks together. And we've done that for the past 25 years, like every exchange does. But what we see is that the world of exchanges is changing. And that's what we actually mean when we say, the IXPs are dying. What we did in the past, just pushing packets and just hoping that they arrive, that's not the future anymore. We see different companies showing interest in exchanges and how they handle traffic. So it's an exciting world. It's an exciting time. Also a lot of additional services that you have to acquire and knowledge you have to make yourself master in. It's fun and disruptive. I like that.
All right. So you move quite a bit of traffic. You've got quite a bit of traffic going across. You got some volume. You talked about companies changing. I would say the applications and how enterprises using their data is changing. So traditionally, I would think of an IXP as a layer 2 kind of setup.
We are.
And now you're starting to talk about different services and things you want to offer. That seems inconsistent with what an IXP is. Maybe let's talk a little bit about that.
It's somewhat of inconsistent of what an IXP is, but what we see is companies are using applications not on-prem anymore, right? If you look 20 years back, every company had a somewhat of a broom room with a mobile airco in it and a very old server that nobody was allowed to touch because it was already running for 10 years. And what happens if it shut down and they couldn't bring it up again? But everything is moving to cloud. Right, so you need your applications, and your applications are not in one cloud. Your applications are 5-6 different clouds. And what you also see is the workload of the applications the many companies are making themselves are also moving towards cloud or hybrid solutions. So your interconnect is becoming more and more important. It's not just we have to do cheap traffic. No, every bit counts. I have customers that are calling me if they have a link flap of 1 second, because their application is hurt. Then we'll have a conversation with the client that they need to build a bit of resilience in their application. But it does show the importance of your traffic, what's happening. So it is changing, and your IXP has to change with it if you want to survive the next 5 to 10 years.
Okay, so that makes sense to me. We've been cloudifying for quite some time. It's not a new thing. And what I think I'm hearing you say is what used to be kind of east-west traffic, or what used to be northbound traffic, is now kind of east-west. So we're staying within our architectures. But I also am aware a lot of the cloud providers offer interconnect between clouds. So are they still going through their IXP to do that, or are they going through another path to get there?
Well, you have cloud to cloud, but you also have cloud workload. You have hybrid solutions. It depends, and it depends how a customer is dealing with that solution. So there are multiple ways of dealing that, and with an IXP is one of them. And if you have a party that can offer multiple services, you have somebody who can help you guarantee that your application and your workload is safe and up and running. In my experience, if you have to troubleshoot 5 providers to see what's going on and what's going wrong with your application, you're not happy. You're really not happy. So bringing a wider portfolio to be a more full service station for your enterprise and your business customer, that really helps. Because other parties are doing it as well, right? So you need to keep up. Otherwise, in 5 years, you're not there anymore.
So Jeff from the audience asked a question. It's kind of along the same line. Is when you're adapting, you're building a platform. Is what he inferred, right? Based on the opening conversation, said when building the platform to meet enterprise expectations around security, compliance, and cloud integration, what has it been like, and what are some of the challenges?
Well, I don't think the show is long enough for that one, but we can summarize it a little bit. Well, you need to really think about your architecture, right? That's where you start. So what we have done, and I can only tell you what we have done. We've built two fabrics. We have an A and a B fabric. A is what everybody knows, right? That's the exchange. That's what pushing the most traffic. But we've got a separate vendor, separate data center, separate fibers, B fabric, also towards the cloud. So we can provide an enterprise customer with a fully separated, redundant transport network. But also on your security level, an IXP is a much closer community than you have on the public internet, right? You can also build VPNs, but your IXP is a little bit more secure. And what my colleagues from the development team and my CTO has done, they've designed something that you can slice your connectivity. So we call that elastic. And that's how you can manage and manipulate how your traffic will come inbound into your network, but also how you send it out outbound. So you can have separate security policies, separate rules, separate SLAs on how you manage your traffic. Combine that with a security feature like anti-DDoS on an exchange. You have a very secure platform, resilient platform. Well, that's kind of how you do it.
I get the A and B. I get you went right into security, which is one area that always interests me. So threat intelligence. Yeah. What's an IXP's general role in that? What's your obligation? Are you obligated to tell two peers that one's misbehaving and tell the other peer, or are you agnostic to bad behavior going on?
We're agnostic. We transport traffic, and what kind of traffic we don't care. We just push traffic. But we do help the receiver what kind of traffic they want to receive. So if party A wants to send a DDoS to party B, party A can send it because they have port capacity, but party B can choose not to receive it. Because if I start meddling with what somebody is sending over the exchange, then neutrality goes out the window.
That's where I was going to go. So that's the next big band-aid to pull off, right?
Yeah, we're not going to rip that band-aid. No, neutrality is really important for that. So no, we don't care what you send, but we can help you to choose what you want to receive.
So for an SLA, then, is security not like route flapping and things you just talked about? How is that getting into your SLA? Are you just monitoring it on my behalf and not telling anybody? Or how do you offer that SLA then?
Well, this is a fun one. Well, you have your SLA on multiple levels, right? So we have multiple services, and that's where you can agree your SLA on. We have transport, so we can see if you have your from your A side to your B side, is your transport up and running? And that can be optical transport, that can be MPLS transport, but we can measure that. We can also measure if we drop traffic for you. So there are all kind of metrics that we can use to measure an SLA on, and it's always for us what kind of risk we see and how we can mitigate that and how we can report on that. So for transit, we are reliant on third parties to get your traffic, for example, all the way to China. And we cannot guarantee you that we can get the traffic all the way to China. We just can send it to the next party, the tier one, to get it there. And that's the same with, for example, fibers. A lot of people exclude fiber cut in your, because if somebody jams a chainsaw through your fiber duct, then force majeure is always part of that one. So SLA is a very big discussion within our company. Also, how to monitor it, how to implement it, and what kind of levels you want. So that's a really tough one.
So let's shift gears a little bit. We have a question from the audience. The audience question says, when you look at traffic patterns across LIX today, what is one signal or trend that surprised you in the past year? What has changed in the last year?
Well, there are a few fun ones. One of the major ones, and that really surprised me, was, for example, Formula One. They've thrown every bit of optimization out of the window. So streaming over the top, over the no caching, no multicast, just every subscriber to a Formula One stream unicast. So that's about 1.5 terabit to 2 terabits of traffic. And it can come from anywhere. The streaming clusters were not mature enough when that happened. So it shifted all over the place. So it came from Frankfurt, it came from Amsterdam, and that was really horrible and not well coordinated within the community, I think, but an interesting one. But one of the fun ones we saw, and what I personally found funny, was when COVID hit. So when COVID hit, we noticed on the total graph of our network that we saw a kind of saw-like motion. And it started like around 7 o'clock in the morning, all the way to around 5. And when we dived into that and looked into that, it happened with the online meetings. So all the online meetings are almost ending 5 minutes before the hour, right? So every time you have a little dip on your total graph, and you got like a saw pattern on it. So,
but isn't that traffic more like a traditional internet traffic that you've already engineered to handle? I mean, it's a bit more forgiving in using protocols we've been using for a long time, right? So as opposed to like an AI deployment where I'd expect a different traffic behavior. Is that a safe assumption?
It's not a problem to handle it, because we don't look at what kind of traffic we're transporting, right? We get the traffic, we label it MPLS, and we just pass it through the network. So if it's video, it's just volume shifting. That's a difficult one to manage, and not my routers, my switches will do it, right? As long as I have the backbone capacity, but to plan for that's a challenge. Because I assume, for example, traffic coming from a streaming cluster in Amsterdam, I know the data center, I have 2 terabits towards the data center, no problem. And traffic instantly shifts, and we shift 1.5 terabits to Frankfurt. That's a challenge. And then we need to step in and intervene. But the kind of traffic doesn't really matter for us.
Okay. I guess if traffic pattern doesn't matter, you gave the F1 example, and I guess it makes sense for me to step back and talk a little bit more about the types of services. You talked about IXP evolving, right? We hit security as a service.
Yeah.
I think you made an inference to BGP, which is pretty important in our worlds. What services are folks looking for from an organization like yours?
From us, our customers? Our customers are more, one of the most requests we have is security. Right? It is the anti-DDoS, the DDoS security. We call it, most of them, anti-DDoS, because that's something that's challenging on an IXP, right? There are some examples of IXPs helping customers with that, but mostly it's a blunt hammer. Like you have a community for a black hole, but I don't really want a black hole traffic, because I'll also start black holing correct traffic. Shifting your traffic over to a transit provider because you need to handle your DDoS security is not nice, because you lose your latency, you lose control. You have to shift back again, so that's all operational impact. So that's one we've been working on and looking to see how can we apply DDoS security on a layer 2 service with layer-free arguments, because then it will become fun, right? So that's something we're releasing somewhere in August, I think, from memory, but I have to double check that, but you can see it on our website, is fine-grained DDoS security on a layer 2 service on our VLAN, on our Exchange VLAN. And that's one of the projects I'm very proud of and very excited to be doing. We thought of it about 2 years ago somewhere in Rome, with too much gin and tonics, because then you get the best ideas. And then the next morning you kind of have to wake up and hope that it still was a good idea and that you did not make a complete ass of yourself. But this one really took shape, and the testing is promising. So
can you share a little bit on the architecture or the technology that you've needed to do that kind of stuff? Is there anything you're able to talk about?
Oh yeah, sure. It's not a secret. So what we did is we had a drink with the guys from Deepfield. They have something really cool because they use the FP silicon of Nokia. Our A fabric is built on Nokia, so that really helps us. And with a few adjustments in the software, we could apply that service on the layer 2 service, but with the full feature capability. So we can filter the DDoS when it comes into our network. So I don't have to transport it over my backbone. I can just filter it as it comes in, keep my network clean.
So at terabit speeds, you're able to filter this stuff out and not really impact my traffic.
Yeah, we can filter basically the connected capacity of our exchange. So that's about, I don't know how many, 60, 70, 80 terabits or something like that. We can filter that out, yeah.
But is that not a threat intelligence kind of model that the Deepfield has, threat intelligence?
Deepfield has genome, of course. So that will help us with the threat intelligence, but we mirror traffic towards the analyzing servers to see what happened.
Right,
but that's
we spent a bit of time on security. I think we've covered one or two of the questions there based on your answer already. There's been a few popping up. There's a question here that says, as AI inferencing becomes more distributed and latency sensitive, how do you see enterprise exchanges like NLIX enabling or accelerating the shift, especially in terms of edge capacity, data locality, or cloud interconnects?
Yeah.
That's a long question.
That's a very long question. So I think that our role in that part will stay the same as we are now, right? We connect, we help people reach the destination, and I don't think AI will be a very different part of that. So I do think AI clusters will start moving closer and closer to your end customers. So that's where we can play a role, because we do have a lot of eyeballs connected to our network. So we can, and we also talked to several companies about placing exchange caches, because telecom providers really don't want them in their network, but they want them close by. So that's where we can play a role in. But I don't think AI will be the game changer for that.
All right. So once again, kind of taking another pivot here, Pete says, what are the key considerations when designing or selecting the physical location of a new IXP?
Well, one of the things we always check for is networks on site, right? There has to be a reason to come. If there are no networks on location, it's very expensive to build a location. So it has to be financial, sane. But if you look at power, it depends on what we build. We have about 100 locations throughout Europe, small and large. The large ones, we plan for about 60 kilowatts of power. We have secure suites because they are core locations. The biggest one, we have 24 racks available, and we place a router capable of 212 terabits of switching capacity. So they're the massive ones. But we will also do small ones. And then we go for single rack, about 5 kilowatts of power. But the main selecting criteria is potential of the site. Is there a reason to come? And that can be a low traffic amount. For example, we are we're represented in Dublin, but we don't do terabits towards Dublin, but we do a lot of cloud transport.
All right, Pete has been slamming questions into the chat. We got a list of 4 or 5 of them here. I think I'm going to skip to the business question, and we'll come back to some of the other ones. What are the cost savings and performance improvements of an ISP can expect by connecting to a local IXP?
Well, IXPs are no longer, if you compare us to ISPs, we're no longer the cheap option. And that's also one of the things we're saying is IXPs have to bring more value than volume, right? So connecting to IXP should improve your service and not really make it cheaper. There are a lot of cheap ISPs there. I can't compete with them. I don't even want to compete with them because they go so low, my margin would be none. But I can add value. And that's the biggest change for us, I think, is how can you add that value and how can you see that value and help your customers see that value. So we had a complete changeover of our sales organization, how not just give step back. Technical IXPs like us used to give a solution, right? You come to us and we give you a port and we give you a price for a port, but that's not working anymore and it's not sustainable for the future. So what we're doing is we're engaging with our customers and trying to see what's their problem and how can we help them, how can we make them better. And that's where we add the value. And then we come up with solutions like a private exchange, a SaaS Connect. So you have an application, you have about 100 customers within our reach. So we give you a private exchange, how to connect your customers to your application. We can give you a clean pipe to whatever anti-DDoS service provider you want. We can help you with SaaS. We can help you reach your local offices. So it's not just pushing packets, right? That's the old exchange, and that's that.
All right. So not just pushing packets, but in order to move packets at a magnitude and scale, you're probably doing quite a bit with higher speed interfaces. I think on our prep call, we talked about that. Let's just change up a little bit and talk a little bit about that. What are you doing with your interfaces and talk to your architecture a little bit?
Just finished the proof of concept, which is really cool. I get all excited about it. One of our major connected networks towards NLEX is KPN. KPN is the largest telecom provider in the Netherlands and our mother. So we are a subsidiary of KPN, and we supply a massive amount of capacity towards them. So it's like 12 terabits or so connected capacity. So in order to transport that, we just finalized a rebuild of our Rotterdam-Amsterdam connection. And one of the things I already talked in the past about is how can I make an exchange more efficient, more greener, reduce our technological footprint, reduce power consumption. So we removed the OTN equipment from it. So we're doing now machine to machine, so router to router, DWDM on coherent 400G with just our boosters and preamp. So we're moving the complete OTN transformation, which saves a lot of money because that's always fun to do, and it saves a lot of power and equipment. So we're moving almost everything to 400G because it's the most efficient, and it's cheaper to buy, to be honest. So that helps. But the coherent move is really cool, and I'll see that within the Netherlands in the coming years, all moving to 400G. But we're also testing if we can do this internationally. So one of the tests we're planning is doing this from Frankfurt towards Amsterdam. It's about 560 kilometers. And we'll see if we'll be able to reach it and still have We'll make sure we have light on the other end, but see if we can make something from it.
Now, you were Grayfield making this transition. Is 800 gig in your near-term roadmap?
Yeah, of course. I have 800G on my coherent optics will come available. We'll start deploying them rather fast. Yeah, I don't see any reason why not, right? So
you mentioned kind of a greener or a more sustainable data center or footprint.
Yeah.
How does that different, and how does that weigh into vendor selection and what you do?
Well, vendor selection helps, right? We chose Nokia for a reason. One of the things is stability, but also power consumption per gigabit is really, really nice of the Nokia. But it makes a difference, but not that big one, right? So yes, you reduce but you push more traffic, so you still consume a lot of power. One of the things we did for Amsterdam is if I look at my traffic is the most energy efficient if I can handle the traffic within the same box, right? If I have my source and destination connect to the same machine, traffic is cheapest, traffic is fastest, and it's consuming the less amount of energy. So we redesigned Amsterdam, and we placed 3 big-ass machines in Amsterdam, and that's serving about now 90% of all connectivity in Amsterdam. So the chance that traffic will stay in the same box is higher. And if it's not in the same box, it's the next box. I don't have to make 3, 4, or 5 hops. So that will reduce my footprint and makes it greener.
All right, so you're architecting to use less hops, less capacity used, and in theory that will result in less power consumed. That's what I just heard.
Less power per gigabit. Yeah.
All right. We're getting towards the tail end of our conversation, but I have a couple questions I want to still ask. One, in the pre-conversation, we talked a bit about regulation and where regulation is. So there's a couple things that came to mind after we talked. I did a little thinking. It sounds like some of the European regulation would drive these changes to an IXP anyway, that there's some demands that the regulation is forcing you to be more, more cognizant of what's happening in your environment and be more resilient. Is that partly the driver here?
No, but it helps. The sustainability is for some companies mandatory, but not from government regulation. We do get the emails from every data center to ask us to put our equipment in power saving mode, but I haven't found that button.
No, but I was talking more about like essential infrastructure, where your data lives, that
that's
kind
more
of
on
regulation.
compliancy. So we do have our ISO 27001 because that's mandatory. We do have 9001 for quality control. We do have the audits from the authority of the telecom in the Netherlands because we're vital infrastructure in the Netherlands. So that means that if we go down, we hit the 8 o'clock news. If it's still available at that point. But one of the fun things, and that's one of my CFO's biggest headache, what we see is the DORA coming in, and that's the Digital Resilience Act that has been forced onto banks and financial institutions. And that one is really demanding. But the regulation itself, if you follow up with your ISO certification, that's not a really big problem.
So where are you going? Although we talked about higher speed, additional services, what are things you think you'll be adding in the future for customer demand? What kind of services do you think you'd want to architect in or bring in?
Oh, that's a good one. I actually don't know yet. We're still deploying. So DDoS security is now new and hot. No, I still have to see what's next.
And there was a question that we didn't take earlier that talked about DDoS. Since you brought it up one more time, I'll go final question on DDoS. Is when you have multi-homed or multiple path, how is the DDoS security working in that environment?
Well, we can only filter right what's coming through us. So I always advise in your defense strategy, what's your intake going to be like. So you have to manage how your traffic is coming in. If you're multi-homed, you're always gonna, if you use the traditional anti-DDoS providers, you'll shift your /24 towards that specific scrubbing center and take it all in. In our case, because we can do it in line, and you don't see that the traffic, we don't shift the traffic. You have to manage your upstreams. So if you get a DDoS in an upstreams that's not managed by us and you have no DDoS security on it, I would say shut it off.
All right. So as a final question, I want to leave a kind of open-ended question for you to, we've talked about the services you're bringing, some of the lessons learned. I guess, have the lessons learned changed how you're deploying your infrastructure or the risk tolerance, or are you doing anything different during the last year's worth of experience here?
Oh yeah, I moved the company now for 5 years, and if I look at my first deployments and how I do it now, it's totally different. So yeah, you learn, you get better at it, more efficient at it, more pragmatic at it. But I think the best lesson, I think the best lesson is to cooperate with the data centers you're working with, and do not try to enforce your views on it. So every data center does it different, and as an IXP or a service provider, you have to be the one that's flexible in working with the data center.
How do you remain neutral when that happens? Isn't the biggest data center going to ask for some feature set or something like that that could influence the others, or how do you keep that siloed?
No, that's pretty. They also want they want us to be neutral, right? So a lot of data center wants us on premise because then they can carry the label that they are a neutral data center. So they're beneficial that we stay neutral. So that's not really a problem.
Well, awesome. I want to thank you for taking the time to share with us. I know we've gone all over the place in this conversation. Any final thoughts as we close?
No, just I really enjoyed it. I want to thank you for having me. And if we have a new exciting subject, then we'll do it again.
We'd love to have you back. For our audience, we hope you enjoy these live presentations. We're getting a lot of feedback. Reach out to me, DM me if you've got suggestions for content you want to see, if you want more technical, more business, just let me know what you want. We're going to go there. If you've got a guest that should be on these shows, also always interested to find out who you'd like to have. We do have another Terabit Talks scheduled for the week of June 18th. We're going to have a company called Cloudbear on. It should be another interesting conversation. If you've got conversations, things you want to know about that, send them in and we will honor them. Until then, thanks again for joining us. We'll see you next time. Bye for now.